Hi everybody, welcome back to State of Play with Brandon Bales. I'm so very excited to be bringing you another great guest today, and this man is someone who I've wanted to meet for a little bit, Nathan Vella from Capy Games. Welcome to the show.
Thank you very much for having me. Super excited to be here.
Let's touch really briefly on what you have coming up, and then I want to come back to that.
Okay.
SUPER T.I.M.E. Force.
SUPER T.I.M.E. Force.
A brand new game from Capybara Games.
Yep, it's really exciting for us. It was kind of a fluke, I guess, a really weird kind of like strange situation where every year in Toronto, Jim and M. McGinley and Rob Siegel, who works at Get Set Games, are the guys that did Mega Jump of like 2 billion downloads, whatever. They run a thing called the Toronto Game Jam, or TO Jam. And we had been really kind of motivated to start doing more jam stuff in the studio, so we started running like week-long jams in the studio at Christmas, like before the break, or trying to get, just trying to flex those muscles a little bit and try to toy around with ideas that everybody in the studio has. And so a few of our guys, actually like 8 or 9 of us, all went and did TO Jam, and one of the teams was one of our lead programmers, Kenneth Young, and our 2 twin artists, Mike and Vic Nguyen. And they made this game with this crazy time rewind mechanic and character classes in 3 days. And when the jam was over, played the game, we were just kind of like awestruck by what they managed to accomplish in 3 days, and kind of said like, what's going on with this game? And Ken and Mike and Vic were just super keen on continuing to work on it, and we loved it, so we were super keen to continue working on it. And so but the thing is like, Ken's a lead, Mike's a lead, Vic's a lead, they're already working on other games, so how do we make it work? And we kind of hummed and hawed about it, figured out like, fuck, why don't we just work on it on Fridays? Make it a Friday game. Like, work on your full projects for 4 days a week, and then jam on this and see what happens. And it's like, because they did all of that work in 3 days, it was like, well shit, 1 day a week seems like a good amount of time.
Right. And
they just kept jamming out crazy ideas and really refining the like core design of it, and came around IGF time, and we were like, well, do you guys want to toss in an IGF and see what happens? I mean, it's a bit early, but like it could be pretty cool. And so they just crunched on it for a bit, like a week or 2 of work, and put a build in and got Jason DeGroot of 6955 fame to make some rad music. And all of a sudden we had this neat little compressed demo, put it into IGF, and fast forward those couple months of judging, it got a Tech Excellence honorable mention. And then about a month and a half before IGF and GDC, Microsoft called us and said, hey, we're running this XBLA prize where one of the IGF nominated games gets a slot on XBLA and a publishing deal for Xbox Live Arcade. And
yes, please.
Time Force is in the running, and we were just kind of like, really? Okay, that's pretty awesome. Found out a couple weeks after that we had indeed won it. Went through the process of like sorting out, contracts and all that fun stuff, and then got up on stage at IGF and picked up an award for that. And that was the same night that we won a Developer's Choice Award for Sorcery, so it's the most crazy, insane night. And this is just, we're still working on it as kind of a side project, and showed it at PAX East, went over super well. Was really excited to see just people picking it up and kind of like having those like, oh, wait a second, when you die, you rewind, and what I just did is still affecting the world, and their eyes just kind of light up. And people sat down and played the whole, and it was a long demo. They played through the whole thing. Tons of people, tons of great feedback, tons of great kind of press coverage. And so the next thing you know, there's this SUPER T.I.M.E. Force thing has kind of grown from this neat little seed of a game jam idea all the way into the next Capy game. And it's just because, I mean, a big part of it is because we've got a bunch of really, really rad people at the studio that make games because they enjoy doing it. They just, the idea of game jams in general is just super interesting to me, because I think it's a great exercise, and it's also, as you've seen something like Kyle Pulver's Offspring Fling, which is one of the best puzzle platformers I've played in a long time. It's another game jam game that just came out of nowhere. It's up on Steam now, doing well, and really worth playing.
I haven't heard of that one. I want it. I want
Check
it right now.
it out. It's like, it's wicked. It's super rad. You play like a mother who has to get her kids to the end of a level, and you do it by throwing them. It's really well done. Kyle's a genius and an amazing Street Fighter player, so I love him.
That's like his main, what he's known for really is being a Street Fighter player?
No, he's just he's probably the best Street Fighter player in the independent game scene, I think. I would call him that. I don't know who else is better. But he's also working on a game called Snapshot, which is on the show floor on the PlayStation Vita.
I saw the sign for that. I didn't check it out.
Yep. He's a talented dude.
That's great. I really, I've been really moved lately. I gotta give a shout out to Indie Game the Movie. I just saw that a little while ago, and and just doing this show, I'm so amazed by the way that the indie scene is coming together and realizing that, this renaissance is happening. I feel in a way, that people are realizing that it's not just about going and begging at a publisher's door for.
We've done that,
and
it's. I mean, Clash of Heroes was. I mean, I love that we made that game. I love that game, and Ubisoft let us make that game, and that's crazy.
It is crazy.
It makes no sense to me why they would but at the same time, we've been through that kind of like publisher pipeline a bunch of times, even in our early life as making work for hire cell phone games. We've done that publisher process, and it does have certain advantages, I think, but when we work beside John Mack and Queasy Games, we work down the street from Drinkbox, we work down the street from Marin Reagan of Metanet, who made N+. Sean McGrath, who's making Dyad, is well, he's in northern Toronto, so he's way the fuck out there. But when we work around all these crazy, amazing, talented people who just make stuff they care about, and watching them be successful is very inspiring. And that's really what helped our studio kind of come out of that work for hire publisher model and try and really realize our potential, I think. And I think the whole kind of renaissance that you talk about is, it's not just a renaissance of development. It's also a renaissance in funding. It's it's this whole massive industry shift from a model that had a lot of components to it that were totally broken and made no sense from a development standpoint, into a model where it kind of makes more sense for people to make games in small teams than it does in big teams. I'm not the type of person that doesn't. I play the shit out of big games. I'm the biggest. I fucking love Street Fighter. I love games of that scope for sure, the Uncharted series or whatever. But I think it's amazing that we have that kind of gap. We have the AAA, and then we have whatever else nebulous kind of thing that people have dubbed indie games, but kind of include a whole lot of other things that maybe, depending on whatever your definition is of indie, and I have no idea what that actually is. Right. Anything under $3 million, let's say that, and that is an amazingly powerful section of the games industry right now. It's really where not only some of the best stuff is coming from, and some of the coolest and most innovative, or pushing games in a very different direction, like folk games and big games and small iOS games, but it's also where a lot of people are actually being way more financially successful. And it's really cluing people into the idea that making games that you care about, making games based on an idea that you believe in, is actually a feasible thing to do. And that's, to me, that's kind of that's the aha moment. We had that aha moment, and we did the things that you were supposed to do as a games business. We went out, we got contracts, big contracts for brands that are mega multinational. And we struggled pretty hard. We made cool stuff, and I don't want to at all downplay how much fun we had. But since we've started kind of really sitting down and saying, what are we all about? What games do we care about? What do we want to make? Critter Crunch on PlayStation Network, Clash of Heroes, Sword and Sorcery, Super Time Force. Those games have been way more successful for us, not just kind of from the pure financial, but also taking the studio from a group of dudes that had never made games before into what I think we are now, which is one of those guys that hopefully people look at and expect something good from.
I think so. The quality is there, man. It's evident in every project, I feel.
I hope so.
Yeah.
I think so, but that sounds cocky. So I'll just smile and nod at that one.
Yes. Well, allow me to be that guy. Great job.
And there's my head.
Well, let's talk about that turning point then. Because I understand that you guys did a dozen or so mobile games on contract.
Yep, we did Cars, Pirates of the Caribbean, American Idol, Scarface, ESPN. We did, worked with Disney and Warner and EA and a whole bunch of different, all that stuff. And that for us, it was kind of actually awesome, because they're little 5-6 month projects, super small. And we were an entire studio full of people that had never made video games before. So we were just kind of getting paid to learn in a lot of ways. And you have to learn fast, and it's really hard work and stuff. But we were very satisfied with the games that we made, but we were not, we didn't know what satisfaction was until we made our own stuff.
So Critter Crunch was your first project that you said, all right, we're going to sit down and just what do we want to do? Like, what do we want to see?
Yeah.
in it?
Yeah. Well, Critter
That's
Crunch
cool.
actually had a weird. Like, Critter Crunch was a cell phone game that we had made that we put into IGF Mobile the first year that there was an IGF Mobile, and now there isn't even an IGF Mobile, which I like. And it won the best game that year, and that really was a kind of a weird turning point for us too, because at that time no one would pick it up really. Like Disney was publishing it or had agreed to publish it, but they couldn't get it up anywhere on the carriers or anything. Like nobody wanted to take it. But then we won that and a few other like best of year awards, and all of a sudden carriers took it, and it generated enough revenue that we had this little seed that we could use to then build Critter Crunch out on PlayStation Network, which is an amazing thing too, because trying to convince somebody to like, you know, to put out a puzzle game, a downloadable platform that isn't PopCap was a really tough call. And we had a guy who was working at Sony at the time, his name's Nathan Vella, who really just believed in us and really fought it through. And this like one dude who is a really close friend of mine, and I love that guy like a brother, and he still continues, like to this day, even though we don't work together, he still helps us out all the time. And that's this weird kind of like, you know, that's again one of those like stories of how did Capy come together. It's like we made friends with really awesome people, and those awesome people helped us take games that were already awesome and bring them somewhere. So it's like, make cool game, make friends with somebody who can help, succeed.
It's a surefire formula.
I actually, like, Chris, our creative director, and I gave a talk at the IGDA Montreal a while back called Beers with Friends. It was basically about tracing the entire lineage of Capy through, like, how the process literally was. Make something that people actually want to play, and then go out for beers with people. And fun, and going out for beers with people just will kind of like by proxy, you know, people can see that you care about your project when you're just talking about it as friends rather than when it's so obvious that you're shilling a marketing thing.
With bullet points.
Yeah, because I mean, like everybody from the highest up at the largest companies all the way down to the smallest micro studios, nobody wants to be sold to. Everybody wants to buy into something. Everyone wants to care about something, and that is how you do it. I think that's kind of been the thing that's worked out the best for us, is just like, make cool shit and be cool, and people will actually want to help you out.
That's awesome. Well, that's great. So, when you guys were deciding to do Critter Crunch, you had put it on iOS. What was it about expanding it that was so appealing at the time?
Well, there was two things. One is we knew it was good.
Cool.
Right? We knew that we really believed in the game. We thought it was funny and really had a lot of personality to it, and we felt like there was like a giant gap in that kind of arcadey puzzle games, like games that we used to play in the arcades that you'd feed quarters into, Puzzle Bobble, or like, you know, games like that, Magical Drop, like that style of game. And because we knew it was good, and because we felt like there was that kind of hole, and we were like, okay, that makes sense. And then we have a ridiculously talented art team, and we knew we could just kind of like hand it to Kiko, who is the artist animator on it, to do who did all of the art and animation for the characters.
So good. It's so good.
It's that combined with the art that Sylvain did for the backgrounds, like really inspired by like the background art from Bambi. I don't know if anybody's seen Bambi, but
I don't know what that is.
No, but anyway, the background art really inspired. So we knew that when we put all those pieces together, threw in some multiplayer, threw in some more jokes, you know, made it, like, filled it with as much personality as I feel like we have at the studio. We were just like, that's a good thing to do. That makes sense. It's not like we're not trying to make an MMO as our first game, you know, or as our first kind of like console game. We're not trying to like, we're trying to do a very specific thing and do it as well as possible and polish it to a sheen. And I think that was. I mean, it's hard to sell a puzzle game on PSN or something, but I think we did a surprisingly good job at that. And I think people, it kind of like put the studio in people's minds in a like very subtle way, because it wasn't that kind of big breakout thing or anything, but it had characters barfing rainbows into other characters' mouths, which is pretty unforgettable. and it was you know, it was really fun to play. And I think that was kind of like the big motivation for it was like, okay, we know that we can nail this. We know we can come right out of the gates on console where we've never been before, and make something that might actually, you know, kind of make a little bit of an impact. And we sold it for cheap because we just wanted to get it as many hands as possible. And that also worked really well to our benefit, I think. And right at that same time, that was when Chris had the concept for Clash of Heroes, and so we were feeling pretty confident because Critter Crunch was turning out well, that we could then turn around and find a way to make a Nintendo DS game, having never made a Nintendo DS game before, ever.
Well, that's a perfect segue, but let me stop for 1 second and say that you're totally right about the Puzzle Bobble angle on that game on Critter Crunch, because I first played it a week ago in anticipation of our meeting. I had played your other games, so not that one.
Mm-hmm.
Downloaded it. You know, and after playing it for a couple hours, I went out to go to the store for a walk, go to the store, and I was singing the Puzzle Bobble music on my way to the store, which is, I just thought, pretty hilarious. So.
It was Chris, our creative director, was really, he's a really great puzzle designer, even though we're not a puzzle studio or anything like that. But we were talking a lot about, like, how weird is it that casual games have just sucked puzzle games out of the entire kind of like gaming market and moved it into a different space. And that was never the case on Nintendo, nor Super Nintendo, nor Dreamcast. No, like it just happened at like PlayStation 2-ish times. And we were kind of like, oh, that's weird. Like, why don't we just make one? Like, that sounds like a cool idea. And that's, I think, my whole kind of like new mantra as somebody running a studio, and kind of for the whole small side of the industry, or small game side of the industry as a whole, is like, if you have an idea and it sounds stupid, it's probably going to be successful. If you have an idea and it sounds safe or easy or a guaranteed success or whatever, failure, guaranteed failure. So just like that, I mean, I'm joking, but I'm actually not really joking. It's like, come up, like the craziest shit out there is the stuff that I think has the biggest impact.
Right.
Dear Esther sounds like a stupid idea. Yeah, let's make an interactive poem in Source and sell it to people. Like, that sounds ridiculous to me, yet it's a massive, massive success and a very important piece of that kind of like timeline of video games as a form of culture, I think. Dumb idea, big success.
That reminds me of a time when I was living in New York. My playwright friend, we'd go to these playwright meetings, and they had a challenge one time where everyone was supposed to write the worst play they could imagine. And he said it was the best meeting he'd ever been to. He said that it was just amazing. These people were reading these things that were ridiculous, but it just somehow ended up turning the corner once they were realized, and it's just that I think it's a great lesson to take. I'm gonna have to remember that in my own life.
I do. I think it actually permeates a lot of forms of culture in general, not just games culture, but like a lot of the people that have written some of the most successful graphic novels or made the craziest films or whatever. Those are, in a weird way, even if they're not massive financial successes, they're those pieces that will kind of make you remember. And that's, I think that kind of like mind share is really important.
True. Well, so let's move, since we were naturally segueing into talking about Clash of Heroes, let's talk about that. You're making another puzzle game, and on Nintendo DS, like you said, and it really was kind of amazing. I think at the end of the day that it did come out. It's so different. It's such an amazing amalgamation of genres, I guess, or maybe not genre. It's a puzzle game, but I
actually think it's a strategy game. It's just hidden behind a puzzle system.
True.
I remember the first time that Chris, our creative director, pitched us the idea, and he was sitting in the bathtub playing DS, as he does quite often. And most of his ideas come from baths and or showers. And he was playing Puzzle Quest, and he loved Puzzle Quest, but he kind of also didn't love Puzzle Quest because it was really just a random system kind of playing outside of Bejeweled, wrapped in this nice wrapper. But he was like, this is really an amazing idea. Like, let's take that and try to kind of like shift it in a different direction. And when he pitched that idea, everybody's like, that's the one and only time that like within 3 seconds everybody was just like, done making the game, see you later.
Yes.
Like, got up, walked out. No convincing, no story needed, nothing. And so we right after that, because again it was like we want to be making games that we all want to make, and man, did we ever really want to make that game. And so we put together a really kind of hardcore pitch for it. Really, really like one of the best looking pitch documents I've seen. And I loved the pitch. I think it looked awesome. Originally, the game was called Little Big Battle. And so we were going to GDC to pitch Little Big Battle. And 3 days before GDC, Little Big Planet got announced, and they made us look like such assholes. Like, thanks, Media Molecule. I appreciate that one. That was a good. No, so we had to go into meetings being like, trust us, we came up with this idea for the name before Little Big Planet. We didn't just write this pitch in 3 days. So yeah, we pitched it around, and a bunch of people surprisingly were really keen on it, and Ubisoft were the guys that really believed in it the most. They really just wanted to make it fit into the Might and Magic universe, and we wanted to make the game so badly that we were willing to like kind of, you know, we'll take your story pieces or your kind of world pieces, because we're most interested in that kind of like, you know, amalgamation of puzzle and strategy and the kind of like adventure component to it and the multiple characters and stuff, and it worked out really well. And I mean, it was a very kind of serendipitous thing, because that was the project that we kind of needed to do to really like believe that we could make a game of that scope. Like, it's a 25-hour game. It's
big,
beefy.
Yeah.
And we know that we could make a game. We now know that we can make a game of that scope, and we probably don't want to make a game of that scope ever again. Very interesting learning experience. So yeah, we put it. I mean, it was originally supposed to be a much shorter development, but trying to figure out the design for such a complex system was just an insane amount of work. And we had Chris, our creative director, and then Greg Georgiadis, who's a senior designer, I guess we'll call him. He's one of our game designers, amazingly talented, low-level designer. Balanced 25 hours of the game kind of by himself. And they just kept jamming on it. And then our writer / designer, Dan, who wrote the whole script for it, which I think is actually really funny. We had tons of jokes in that game. They all just kind of sat in a room with Kenneth, who was the battle designer, and used a grid board with like little colored coins and tried to figure it all out. And you could, by the time they had played with it enough, you could actually play the game in kind of pen and paper format and really understand, like, wait a second, there's like, real battles going on here.
Truly.
People would be in the meeting room, and people would be outside working, and you could hear yelling and clapping. Yeah. And so that's at that point we kind of started to really believe in the project, and then we just had to fill it full of content, which is everybody's favorite part of making games. Tons and tons of content. Yeah. But we ended up working on that game for like 4 years straight because of DS, then through XBLA and PSN, and then through Steam after that. That's a lot of time to be with one game. And making the HD versions was extremely awesome because it gave the artist who worked on Critter Crunch and some of our other artists a chance to really keep flexing that hand-drawn, really stylized 2D HD art muscle. But it was a lot of work. And then I'm very glad that game happened because it really did, it really took it from like, you can make a simple puzzle game to you can make a really complex game. And it really, I think, put a lot of belief within the studio that we could make some cool, crazy shit.
Well, I think you guys really succeeded. I wasn't expecting to like that game. And and then it was recommended to me. I was like, Might and Magic, man, puzzle game, man. And then it turned out to be like one of my favorite DS games ever. It's awesome.
Thanks.
So, congrats.
I'm very happy. I feel like that's kind of for the people who played it, they love it.
Cool.
Not necessarily a giant smash hit, but it did exactly what it needed to do for us. And I'm really thankful that we had the opportunity to make that game.
So Super Brothers Swords and Sworcery. Do you say Sworcery?
I just say Sorcery.
Okay.
It's putting the W in was a jerk move.
Yeah.
But like we get Google alerts whenever anybody misspells sorcery, and I swear since we put that game out, so many people are misspelling sorcery.
Wow. I was looking at some review of it last week, and I saw that too, and she said, with the woman who wrote it said, with plenty of sorcery. And I said, was that a joke? Like, she left the W in there? I couldn't tell. Yeah, that's wild. That's like, would you compare it to like getting a tattoo that you hate or something?
I'm so glad that they came out, that Craig and Chris came up with the idea to throw that W in. But for two reasons. There's the I like game side of it where it's really tongue in cheek and joking and stuff, and then there's like Nathan business hat on where it's so easy to Google, it's so easy to search the App Store for.
True.
Like you can't you can't type in SWORCERY and not get us.
Right. Exactly.
Anywhere, and that's kind of like that's actually helps sell shit.
That's great.
Yeah.
Good on you. Did that start development when you guys were working through the HD versions of Jammer Jam, Clash of Heroes?
Yeah, we had this weird kind of like sequence of events. An artist, Tri Vong, came on, and he was like one of the first people that we had hired that ever worked in video games, and he had been a modeler at Koei Toronto for like 3 months or something like that. And he had worked with Craig Adams of Super Brothers fame there, and so he came on, joined the team, amazingly talented dude, and he's like, oh, hey, you guys like pixel art? You should check out this dude's pixel art. And we were just like, holy shit, this is amazing. I just never really did anything about it. Didn't even really know that he was in Toronto, even though we knew that he was in Toronto. Went to GDC in like 2009 or something like that. Was it 2009, 2010? Anyways, in typical GDC format, got ragingly hammered at a one-up party. And there was this tall blonde dude handing out postcards with pixel art on it. And I took one and I looked and I was like, holy shit, you're Super Brothers. And I gave him my card and he's like, holy shit, you're Capy. And within about 3 to 5 minutes, I had him by the collars yelling at him, saying, like, we are going to go back to Toronto and make a game.
Yes.
And then we did. That was actually kind of the impetus. I introduced, like, Chris came over, like, right while I was shaking him, and then we all just kind of had this kind of crazy coming together of realization that we were all looking to do the same thing. And so Craig quit his job at Koei to go work with us and set up a desk in our office, and didn't really know what we were going to make together necessarily. Craig had some ideas about kind of like, we knew that it was going to be Super Brothers style pixel art because it's kind of the best thing ever. And Craig was really, passionate about that and his style that he had refined since like 2003. He had been working on that kind of Super Brothers brand and illustration. And so, yeah, we started working on it, put together a pitch, applied for some small amount of grant money that just kind of gave us that little bump that we were willing to, yeah, sure, let's make a 10-month small iPhone game or so. We won't spend very much money on it. It'll just be like something that we do that's kind of like complete and whole but small. And then like 10 months later, we were like a quarter of the way through it or something like that. So it ended up being much longer and all that kind of stuff. But it was a very, the time when we decided that it was going to need a lot more time, and we're totally okay with that, was probably the best decision that any of us, Super Brothers or Capy, has made. And Craig kind of almost immediately brought on Jim Guthrie, which is, that kind of defined the project as much as Craig's art and as much as, Capy's technical work and Chris's design and stuff. Jim's music was kind of the defining component of it for all of us, and everything that we did was kind of informed by that. And so when Jim came on, well, first of all, when Jim came on, we all freaked the fuck out because in Toronto and in a lot of Canada, and to people who know anything about independent music scene, like Radio City and Jim Guthrie's solo stuff, like Now More Than Ever, it's legendary. It's kind of, in a lot of ways, it's defined a lot of indie music without people even really knowing that much about who Jim is, except if you're in Toronto or Montreal or whatever. And so after we were done feeding the fuck out, we sat down and just kind of decided that we were all going to collaborate, and not just like, you do art, make this art and make that art, or not just you make music and this sound. It's just like sit in a room, Chris and Craig and Jim and the two programmers, Frankie and John, just kind of sitting down and figuring out what this game was all about. It ended up kind of, helping to define a lot of what all of us care about in games while making it. And it was, it's so easy to talk about it forever because it was such an amazing experience. Even through the shit and piss and Craig almost killing himself through working so hard and it was a really tough project to make, but to see like the coming together of Chris, our creative director, and Super Brothers, and Jim coming in and actually providing real design impact, and watch John and Frankie, the engineers, actually provide, helping these guys realize a vision, and it was just a fucking radical thing. And then to have it come out and do really well and have people really enjoy it, and to be able to kind of keep moving it through PC, do a humble bundle with it, do the Sorcery Art video jam, or Sorcery AV jam was an amazing thing. Like just all this kind of stuff that's come out of it, and now we're bringing it to Japan with the 8.4 guys, which is, I mean, again, continuing that spirit of collaboration. Like, it's not just like 8.4 is just sitting there and translating words and handing it back to us. They're becoming a kind of a part of the Super Brothers Sword and Sorcery EP team in a way, because they're doing a real kind of like Japanese version of the game, like new titles, all of the, like making sure that all of the jokes and tongue-in-cheekness and self-referential components all play correctly in a completely different language and a completely different culture. And then there's a whole bunch of other stuff around it that will get announced when the game comes out, right before the game comes out. Really, really awesome stuff that all kind of facilitated by the amazing people at 8.4. I love those dudes, and dudes and dudette. Super, super cool. And it's really exciting to us. And I think it's also really exciting because I hope it kind of is the start of a really interesting thing that 8.4 can do that not very many other people can do, which is bringing really unique, interesting things from the West to the East. And I really hope that there is a small niche in Japan that is interested in seeing what kind of crazy shit Western devs are throwing out.
I met a guy last night, and he works at a place in Osaka. I don't know. That's not where 8.4 is. Are they in Osaka?
Yeah. What was the name?
His name is Josh. I can't remember his last name. Sorry, Josh, if you're watching.
Oh, Josh is from Active. They do publishing. They publish indie games in Japan.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah.
Good man. Good memory. Okay, so never mind. But he said, I said, what's the indie game scene like in America? And he's like, well, it basically doesn't exist. I mean, in Japan. Yeah. He said, especially Japanese games, because the PC market is totally dead. Yeah. But but there's no Western games really being brought over there in that way. So
yeah,
amazing.
I really think, and plus, like, there's definitely a growing iOS market, and that's a very kind of like interesting opportunity too, because they're smaller games, they're not as hard as a AAA project to bring over. Right. So I'm very excited at that potential, and I think it's a really cool idea. I think it's and it's actually one of those kind of like, put on my fucking hokey hat, but it's actually like one of those things that's kind of important for video games, I think.
Oh, yeah.
When for so long we've sucked all the best games out of Japan. Let's feed them back some good stuff.
I think so. I think that's only fair. We're coming up to a closing point, right? Well, let us. We got more of Super Time Force up front than I thought we might, so that's great. Yeah. I'm really looking forward to playing it. I played some at I Am 8-Bit a few weeks ago.
Awesome, I'm super glad you saw that.
Yeah, I met Kenneth. It was a great time.
Kenneth is the best.
Yeah, he's a cool dude.
Yeah, it was a really, Nick and John from I Am 8-Bit are really amazing dudes. And I really love what they do. And Nick just kind of called me up and was like, hey, we're doing this art show. It's based on time travel. Super Time Force is rad. Do you want to try to? And we were just like, sure, here's a bill. Boom. Done.
It's great.
Bought a ticket for Ken to go out like a day after, and he was there on Friday. It was a very kind of quick thing, but I love that kind of stuff too. Like, it was the same thing with like, we showed the game as well at the Polygon party before E3, and it was a Mike McWhorter, who I adore in so many ways, platonically. He was just like, hey, like, we're about this party and we want to do some game rooms upstairs, and I love Time Force, can we show it? I was like, yep, sure. I was in Amsterdam at the time on vacation with my wife, and just like sent an email like, oh, okay, sure, tomorrow, yeah, whatever.
That's amazing. Well, I can't wait till it comes out. I'm really looking forward to it, and congrats on it.
Thanks very much.
In closing, like, my final question for you is, I wish we had more time. Obviously, this has been way too quick. We'll do it again.
We'll just do it again.
I love it.
We'll just kind of every time we have a conference, we'll just sit down and I'll talk shit for like 25 minutes, and then
easy to do. And we'll talk about beers, and once we run it, we'll just keep talking about other stuff. No, it doesn't have to be video games. So what? All the Capy games so far have been pretty distinctly different. Over your oeuvre. Taking that, would you say there's something that defines a Capy game at this point?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a few things. I think, you know, really striking visual style is very important to us, and that's kind of like we have insane artists and then insane programmers who understand the importance of the insane art. I mean, it's a really amazing thing to do, to have a tech team that really understands how to work with artists. You know, it's not just like great artists. You can have the best artists in the world, but you got to get that shit in game. So that's the striking visual style, I think, is really important. And I think, like, I hate using unique as a word, but I don't, and if somebody can come up with a better word, that's cool. But I think every game that we've done has something, you know, special about it. So there's like a little knob tweak to a different direction where you haven't necessarily played something that's been like that before. And I think that's what we're about. That's what interests us. We're not trying to make these crazy revolutionary games. That's not really, you know, what motivates us. What motivates us is making something that really takes like a genre play and takes it and twists it in a little way and provides a really kind of interesting, encapsulated, unique experience. And then jokes. we really don't take ourselves too seriously, even though like one of our new projects might be a serious game. Who knows? Yeah. But we don't take ourselves too seriously. We understand that part of the reason why we love games is because like they're fun, and sometimes they're stupid fun. And stupid fun is a perfect opportunity to throw in a lot of jokes. I mean, Critter Crunch is in a lot of ways a very stupid fun game, and we just tried to cram it as full as possible with jokes. And we're a studio that likes to be able to sit in a room, and all of our meetings are just like artists, programmers, design. Well, we you know, very rarely have meetings where it's just like, oh no, you guys go over there. And I would say about half the meeting is us talking about important stuff, and the other half is talking about funny things that we could probably try to put in a game. Because that's, I mean, again, it comes down to, you know, what motivates you as a person. It kind of translates into how you make the best games. And we're motivated by really funny and sometimes terrible jokes. So I think those three, the visuals and the uniqueness and the jokes is all something that we're, you know, that's the kind of like whole of it. And even with SWORCERY and SUPERBROTHERS writing, it fit in so well. And I think that's part of the reason why Craig and all of us and Jim and were able to make something that felt kind of right, was because we all believed in those points as being kind of like key tentpole ideas. Yeah.
Well, that's great. That's great. That's great.
Wonderful.
Great, man. Well, that makes me happy, and all the continued success.
I would like that.
I want to thank my guest, Nathan Vella of Capybara Games. They make great stuff. Thank you so much for coming out and being on the show, man. It makes me feel really good. And,
it makes me feel good too, especially since we spent most of our time talking about how awesome we are. Any interview about how awesome we are is A-okay. No, seriously, that was super rad. I'm really glad we got the chance to do it.
Me too, and I hope to do it again in the future.
Done.
All right.
Flex strong muscles.
Thank you so much for watching State of Play with Brandon Bales. We'll see you next time.